The ballroom glittered with champagne chandeliers and cruel laughter, and Harper Oakes stood in the center of it all wearing a gown that had belonged to her grandmother, lace yellowed with age, hem frayed, bodice mended so many times the stitching showed like scars. She had known it was a mistake the moment she walked through the marble archway into the Ashford Estates Grand Hall. The other guests wore silk and diamonds, designer labels and custom tailoring. Their eyes had slid over her like cold water, taking in every darned seam, every outdated ruffle. Then the whispers had started. "Is that vintage or just old?" a woman in crimson asked her companion, voice pitched just loud enough to carry. "Old," another replied. "Look at the waistline. That's not retro. That's poverty." Harper's cheeks burned. She had spent 3 weeks' worth of tips from the diner on the invitation to this charity ball, hoping stupidly, desperately hoping that attending the city's most exclusive event might somehow open doors for her. She was 22 and drowning in student debt, working double shifts to afford night classes in art restoration. The Ashford Foundation funded scholarships. She had thought if she could just meet the right people, make the right impression. Instead, she was being dissected by socialites who spent more on their shoes than Harper made in a month. "I heard she's a waitress," someone said behind her. How did she even get in? Probably saved for years to afford the ticket. How sad. The laughter started then. Not loud, not obvious enough to seem truly cruel to anyone who wasn't the target. But Harper heard it, felt it. The kind of laughter that said she didn't belong, that she was a joke, that she should have known better than to try. She wanted to run. Her throat was tight, her eyes stinging, but her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Keep your chin up, Harper girl. They can laugh all they want, but they can't take your dignity unless you give it to them." So Harper stood still, spine straight, even as the laughter rippled outward through the crowd, even as more heads turned, even as she became the evening's entertainment for people who had never known what it meant to choose between electricity and groceries. Then the ballroom went silent. Not gradually, not politely. It happened all at once, as if someone had cut the sound from a film. The laughter died mid-breath. Conversation stopped. Even the string quartet in the corner seemed to falter. Harper looked up and understood why. A man stood at the top of the grand staircase that swept down into the ballroom. No, not a man. She knew that immediately, though she couldn't have said how. He was tall and impossibly elegant in a black suit that looked like it had been tailored by shadows themselves. His hair was pure white, falling past his shoulders in a straight curtain that caught the light like snow. His skin was just as pale, luminous in a way that made everyone else in the room look washed out and ordinary. And his eyes. Even from across the ballroom, Harper could see they were wrong. Too bright, too intense, the color of frozen silver, of moonlight on a blade. He was beautiful the way a lightning strike was beautiful, dangerous, otherworldly. The crowd parted as he descended the stairs. Not because anyone decided to move, but because their bodies seemed to respond to his presence without conscious thought. Survival instinct. Harper knew what he was. Everyone in the room knew, on some primal level that bypassed rational thought. The city had always had rumors. Whispers about the old families who never aged, who threw parties that lasted until dawn but were never seen in daylight. The Ashford estate itself was said to belong to them, though nobody ever said exactly who them was. Vampires. The word sat in Harper's mind like a stone. Vampires were real, and one of them was walking directly toward her. She should run. Every nerve in her body screamed at her to move, but she was frozen, caught in the weight of that silver gaze as he crossed the ballroom floor. The crowd watched in absolute silence. Someone's champagne glass trembled, crystal chiming against a ring. He stopped in front of Harper. Up close, he was even more impossible. His features were aristocratic, all sharp angles and elegant lines, like something carved from marble by an artist who understood both beauty and cruelty. He smelled like winter night cold air and pine and something darker, richer. Blood, maybe. Or just the absence of humanity. Then he smiled, and Harper's heart forgot how to beat properly. It wasn't a cruel smile. It was warm, real. the kind of smile that reached his eyes and made them soften from frost to something almost human. "May I have this dance?" His voice was like smoke and silk, carrying an accent Harper couldn't place. Something old, European maybe, but from a Europe that didn't exist anymore. The ballroom held its breath. Harper opened her mouth, closed it, tried to remember how words worked. He was still smiling, but she saw something else in his expression now. A challenge. A dare. As if he knew exactly what had been happening before he arrived, knew she'd been standing here alone and humiliated, and was offering her a choice. Accept his hand and let the entire room see, or refuse and confirm everything the cruel voices had implied. Her grandmother's voice again. "Chin up, Harper girl." "Yes," Harper whispered. His smile widened. He extended his hand, long fingers, pale as bone, and Harper placed her palm in his. His skin was cool, but not cold. His fingers closed around hers with perfect gentleness, and then he was leading her onto the empty dance floor at the center of the ballroom. The orchestra, apparently freed from whatever spell had silenced them, began to play. A waltz, slow and sweeping. Harper had taken exactly 4 ballroom dance classes at the community center when she was 16. She barely remembered the steps, but as his other hand settled at her waist and he began to move, she found that it didn't matter. He led so perfectly that her body simply followed, instinct taking over where knowledge failed. They swept across the floor in long, elegant circles. Harper was dimly aware that everyone was staring, that the whispers had started again, different whispers now, shocked and confused. But most of her attention was focused on the vampire holding her. "You're shaking," he said quietly, his lips close to her ear. "You're a vampire," Harper replied, because apparently mortal terror destroyed her filter. He laughed, actually laughed, the sound low and genuinely amused. "I am. Does that frighten you?" "Yes." "Good. You're smarter than most of them." He nodded almost imperceptibly toward the watching crowd. "They pretend not to know what we are because it's easier than facing the truth." "What's the truth?" "That we've ruled this city for 300 years, that every institution they trust, every seat of power they aspire to, answers to us in the end." His hand tightened fractionally at her waist, guiding her through a turn that made her grandmother's old gown flare around her legs. "That we could end them all with barely a thought, but we choose not to because chaos is tedious and order serves us better." Harper should have been terrified. She was terrified. But there was something else underneath it, something hot and defiant that made her meet his eyes and say, "If you're so powerful, why ask me to dance? Why not just command it?" His expression shifted. The amusement was still there, but joined by something sharper, something like respect. "Because power without choice is tyranny," he said. "And tyranny, I've found, makes for poor dancing partners. Is that why you're doing this? To make a point about tyranny?" "I'm doing this," he said, spinning her again, "because I watched them laugh at you. Watched them mock you for wearing an honest dress to a ball full of beautiful lies. And I thought, here is someone with more courage than this entire room combined." Harper's breath caught. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're still standing. I know you didn't run, didn't cry, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing you break." His silver eyes held hers, intense and unwavering. "I know your name is Harper Oakes, that you work at Morrison's Diner on 5th Street, that you're studying art restoration at the community college, and that you spent money you couldn't afford on a ticket to this ball because you hoped it might change your life." Ice slid down Harper's spine. "How do you know all that?" "Because I make it my business to know everyone who enters my home." "Your home?" Harper glanced around at the opulent ballroom, the soaring ceilings painted with Renaissance frescoes, the windows tall as houses. "This is the Ashford estate." "Yes, and I am Jasper Obsidian. The Ashford name is what we call ourselves in your world, but in mine, I am king." The waltz ended. The final note hung in the air like a question, but Jasper didn't release her. His hand remained at her waist, his fingers still curled around hers, and the ballroom was so silent Harper could hear her own heartbeat. "Come with me," Jasper said. It wasn't a command. It was an invitation, soft and almost tentative, as if he expected her to refuse. Harper knew she should thank him for the dance, should escape this gilded trap while she still could, should go back to her tiny apartment and her normal life and pretend this night had never happened. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw the same thing he'd apparently seen in her: courage. Or maybe just stubborn curiosity. "Where?" she asked. "Somewhere you won't be laughed at." He led her off the dance floor, moving so smoothly the crowd seemed to melt away before them. Harper caught glimpses of shocked faces, heard fragments of frantic whispers, but none of it seemed to touch Jasper. He walked like a man who had never doubted his place in the world, had never questioned whether he deserved the space he occupied. They climbed the grand staircase and passed through a doorway into a corridor lined with portraits, old portraits, the kind with subjects in Renaissance ruffs and medieval armor. All of them had the same pale skin, the same two bright eyes. "Your family?" Harper asked. "Some of them. Others were absorbed into the line. Marriage, alliance, conquest." Jasper glanced at her. "We're not so different from human nobility. We simply have longer memories and sharper teeth." "That's a pretty big difference." "Is it? How many humans destroy each other over power and territory? At least we have the excuse of being monsters." They turned down another corridor, this one lit by candles in iron sconces. The walls here were stone, older than the elegant facade of the ballroom. This part of the estate felt medieval, as if they'd walked backward through time. "How old is this place?" Harper asked. "The foundation was laid in 1691. We built it to mimic human architecture, to seem like just another wealthy family's home. But underneath..." He pushed open a heavy wooden door. "Underneath is what we really are." Beyond the door, a stone staircase spiraled down into darkness. Jasper descended without hesitation, and after a moment's pause, Harper followed. The temperature dropped with each step. The air grew thick with the smell of earth and age. At the bottom, torches flared to life automatically, or maybe not automatically. Maybe Jasper had done something Harper hadn't seen. The corridor they entered was carved from bedrock, the ceiling vaulted and Gothic. Doorways branched off at regular intervals, some open to reveal glimpses of libraries and armories and rooms Harper had no context for. "Welcome," Jasper said, "to the Court of Shadows." It opened before them like something from a dream. The corridor widened into a vast underground chamber with a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. Buildings rose from the stone floor, not modern buildings, but something between medieval and Victorian, all spires and arched windows and wrought iron balconies. Cobblestone streets wound between them, lampposts burned with cold blue flame, and there were people, or vampires rather. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, moving through the streets and in and out of buildings. All of them had the same pale skin, the same luminous quality. But they dressed in everything from medieval gowns to modern suits, as if time meant nothing here. "This is impossible," Harper breathed. "No, just very old. We've been building this city beneath your city for 3 centuries. Jasper began walking down a street that seemed to lead toward the center of the cavern. "Most vampires prefer to live here rather than above. Easier. No sunlight to avoid, no humans asking questions." "But you live upstairs." "I have responsibilities in both worlds, and I've never been fond of hiding." They passed vampires who stopped and stared, though whether at Jasper or at Harper she couldn't tell. Some bowed. Others simply watched with those 2 bright eyes, curious and hungry. "Are they going to eat me?" Harper asked, trying to sound braver than she felt. "No, you're under my protection. Harming you would be..." He paused, considering. "Unwise. Because you're the king." "Yes. Do you actually have a crown?" He looked at her, surprised, and then laughed again. "Would you like to see it?" "Kind of, yeah." The building at the center of the underground city was larger than the others, built from black stone that seemed to absorb light. Inside, it was surprisingly warm. Tapestries hung on the walls depicting battles and coronations. A fire burned in a hearth large enough to roast an ox. Furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum filled the space, but comfortably, as if people actually used it. Jasper led her up another staircase into a chamber dominated by a massive four-poster bed with curtains of deep crimson. One wall was covered in bookshelves, another held weapon swords and daggers arranged in precise patterns. He crossed to a cabinet made of dark wood and opened it. Inside, resting on a velvet cushion, was a crown, not gold, but silver, worked into a design of thorns and crescents that seemed to move in the candlelight. "It was forged in 1542, Jasper said, lifting it carefully. "The year I became king. I've worn it exactly twice. Once at my coronation, once at the last blood summit." "Why so rarely?" "Because power doesn't need symbols to be real." He set the crown back in its place and closed the cabinet. "The vampires follow me because I'm stronger than they are, because I've kept them safe and prosperous for 500 years, because I understand the balance between our world and yours. A piece of metal on my head changes none of that." Harper processed the number he'd just dropped. 500 years? Give or take a decade. I stopped counting precisely sometime around the Renaissance. She should have been backing away, should have been looking for an exit. Instead, Harper found herself moving closer, studying his face. He looked perhaps 30 in human years, young enough to be handsome, old enough to carry authority, but his eyes— "Your eyes look older," she said. "Do they? Like you've seen too much." Something flickered across his expression, pain, maybe, or weariness. "I have." "Do you regret it, becoming a vampire?" "I didn't become one. I was born this way." He turned away from her, moving to the bookshelves. "My mother was human. My father was vampire nobility. Their union was forbidden but brief. She died bringing me into the world, and he raised me in the court. I was always vampire, always other. I've never known anything else." "That sounds lonely." "It is." He pulled a book from the shelf, an old leather-bound volume, and opened it without looking at the pages. "But loneliness is tolerable. It's the weight that becomes difficult." "What weight?" "Of knowing that everyone you rule, everyone you protect, will eventually betray you given the right circumstances. Of watching human history repeat itself in cycles of violence and peace while you remain the same. Of wanting—" He stopped. "Wanting what?" Harper asked quietly. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her feel like he could see straight through to her bones. "Something real," he said. "Someone who doesn't want me for my power or fear me for my nature. Someone who might actually see me instead of the crown I don't wear." The silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. Harper's heart was beating too fast. She was in the bedroom of a vampire king, a creature who could kill her without effort, and instead of fear, what she felt was understanding, because she knew what it was like to be lonely, knew what it was like to be invisible unless people wanted something from you, knew the particular ache of wondering if anyone would ever see past the surface to whatever lived underneath. "I see you," Harper whispered. Jasper's expression cracked open. Just for a moment, the kingly composure fell away, and he looked young and vulnerable and desperately hopeful. Then the door burst open. A woman strode in without knocking, tall and regal in a gown of deep green. Her white hair was pinned up with silver combs, her face sharp and beautiful, and currently set in an expression of fury. "What?" she said in a voice like cut glass. "Do you think you're doing?" Jasper's face became a mask again. "Serafina, always a pleasure." "Don't." The woman Serafina pointed at him with one long finger. "Don't use that tone with me. I've known you since you were a fledgling. I was there when your father presented you to the court. I've served this kingdom for 6 centuries, and I will not stand by while you destroy everything we've built." "I'm not destroying anything. You brought a human here, to the heart of our city. You danced with her in front of the entire court above. You've made her a target for every vampire who sees weakness in sentiment." Serafina's eyes cut to Harper, cold and assessing. "And you, girl, Do you have any idea what you've walked into? Harper lifted her chin. No, but I'm starting to get the picture. Are you? Serafina moved closer, circling Harper like a predator. The king hasn't taken an interest in anyone for 200 years. The last human he favored ended up torn apart by rivals who thought they could weaken him through her. Is that the fate you're courting? Ice flooded Harper's veins. She looked at Jasper. Is that true? His jaw was tight. It was a long time ago. He blamed himself. Serafina continued, relentless. Locked himself away for a decade, nearly lost the throne in the chaos that followed. We've only just rebuilt the stability of the court. If you care about him at all, you'll leave before history repeats itself. Enough. Jasper's voice cut through the air like a blade. You forget yourself, Serafina. I am still king. My choices are not yours to judge. Your choices affect us all. You think the other houses haven't noticed? You think they aren't already scheming? Valentius arrived at the ball tonight. He saw you dance with her. He'll use this. Valentius is always scheming. It changes nothing. It changes everything. Serafina's composure finally cracked, her voice rising. You're giving them ammunition. They'll call you weak, compromised. They'll challenge you. Let them. The certainty in his voice made both women fall silent. Jasper stood straighter, and despite his lack of crown, despite his modern suit, he suddenly looked every inch the ancient king. I have ruled this court through wars and plagues and uprisings, he said quietly. I have crushed rebellions and brokered treaties and made the hard choices that kept our people alive. If Valentius or anyone else believes a dance makes me weak, they're welcome to test that theory. I'll remind them why I wear the crown. Serafina stared at him for a long moment. Then her shoulders sagged. I'm trying to protect you, Jasper. You've given so much for this kingdom. You deserve happiness, but not at the cost of your life or hers. Then help me keep her safe instead of telling me to let her go. Harper's breath caught. He was talking about her like she was going to stay, like this was the beginning of something rather than one strange night. She should leave, should thank him for an interesting evening, and walk away before this got any more complicated. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, what happens now? Both vampires turned to look at her. Now, Jasper said slowly, I offer you a choice. You can return to your life. I'll have you escorted home safely. We'll erase the memory of tonight if you wish, make it feel like a dream. You'll be protected from any fallout. Or you stay. Get to know me. Let me get to know you. But understand that staying means entering my world. It means danger. It means becoming a piece in games you don't yet understand. His silver eyes held hers. I won't lie and say I can guarantee your safety, but I will give you my protection, my resources, and my honest desire to see where this goes. You just met me, Harper said. How can you want that? I've lived for 5 centuries. I've met thousands of people, human and vampire alike. Most of them blur together. But you... He moved closer, close enough that she could feel the unnatural coolness of his presence. You stood in that ballroom with your chin up and your courage on display like armor. You walked into my world without hesitation. You see me. That's rarer than you know. Harper looked at Serafina. What do you think I should do? The vampire woman blinked, clearly surprised to be asked. I think you should run as far and as fast as you can. But if you're foolish enough to stay, you should know that Jasper Obsidian is the most honorable vampire I've ever known. If he says he'll protect you, he will. Even if it costs him. Harper turned back to Jasper. Her practical side was screaming at her to leave, to escape while she still could. But there was another part of her, the part that had worn her grandmother's dress despite the risk of mockery, the part that had spent 3 weeks tips on a long-shot hope, the part that believed in taking chances even when they were stupid. I'll stay, she said, for tonight, and then we'll see. Jasper's smile was like sunrise. For tonight, he agreed. Serafina sighed. Then I suppose I should arrange security, and we'll need to address the court. If we control the narrative, we might be able to minimize the damage. Thank you, Serafina. She waved a hand dismissively. Don't thank me. Just try not to die. I'm too old to train another king. She swept out of the room, leaving Harper alone with Jasper again. The silence felt different now. Charged. You must be hungry, Jasper said finally. When did you last eat? Lunch. I was too nervous to eat before the ball. Come. I'll feed you. The dining room was in another part of the castle because that's what it was, really, a castle hidden underground. The table could have seated 20, but Jasper led Harper to one end where 2 places were set. A woman appeared vampire, clearly carrying trays of food that smelled incredible. We don't eat, typically, Jasper explained as dishes were set before Harper. But we keep human staff who do, and the cooks are exceptional. Try the pasta. Harper did. It was the best thing she'd ever tasted, rich with cream and herbs and something she couldn't identify. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until she started eating. Jasper watched her with an expression of contentment, like her enjoyment pleased him. Don't you miss it? Harper asked between bites. Food? Sometimes. I remember flavors more than I remember my mother's face. Strange what the mind holds on to. He poured her wine from a crystal decanter. But blood sustains us in ways human food never could. It's not just nutrition, it's life itself, concentrated. Do you kill people when you feed? No, there are donors. Humans who provide blood in exchange for money, protection, or other considerations. We have strict laws about taking blood without consent or taking too much. Vampires who break those laws face execution. You execute your own people? To protect both our species, yes. If vampires became known as mindless killers, your world would hunt us to extinction. We survive through secrecy and control. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. Does that bother you, that I've killed my own kind? Harper considered. Are we talking about murderers? People who broke the laws you mentioned? Yes. Then no. Justice bothers me less than the alternative. Most humans would call me a monster regardless of the reason. Most humans are hypocrites who ignore their own capacity for violence. Harper set down her fork. I saw a man beat his girlfriend outside my apartment last month. 3 people walked past and did nothing. Don't talk to me about human morality being superior. Jasper's expression softened. What did you do? Called the police, stayed with her until they came, testified at the hearing. Harper shrugged. She went back to him anyway, but at least I tried. You have a protector's heart. Is that a vampire thing to say? No, it's a truth. They talked through the rest of the meal. Harper told him about growing up with her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident, about discovering art restoration through a book she'd found at a yard sale, about the particular frustration of wanting to learn when you couldn't afford teachers. Jasper told her about watching the city grow from a colonial settlement to a modern metropolis, about the politics of vampire houses, about his love of books and his terrible habit of starting construction projects he never finished. There's an entire wing of the castle that's been under renovation for 80 years, he admitted. I keep meaning to finish it. Why don't you? I lose interest. It's the curse of immortality. Everything feels like you'll have time later. That sounds sad. It is, but you get used to it. By the time the meal ended, Harper felt like she'd known him for months instead of hours. He was easy to talk to, thoughtful in his responses, genuinely curious about her life. And he was funny in a dry, subtle way that caught her off guard. When he offered to show her more of the underground city, she agreed without hesitation. They walked through streets lit by blue flame, past vampires who watched with undisguised curiosity. Jasper pointed out landmarks, the building where disputes were settled, the library that held texts older than the printing press, the gardens where they grew plants that thrived without sunlight. How is any of this possible? Harper asked, staring at trees with silver leaves that seemed to generate their own light. Magic. Not the kind from fairy tales, but a different understanding of how the world works. Vampires are inherently magical creatures. We bend certain rules. He plucked a leaf and handed it to her. These were cultivated by a botanist who's been working on them for 300 years. They photosynthesize using energy from the earth instead of the sun. Harper turned the leaf over in her hands, marveling at it. It's beautiful. So are you. She looked up, startled. Jasper was watching her with an intensity that made her pulse race. I'm really not, Harper said. I'm average at best, especially compared to... She gestured vaguely at the beautiful vampires passing by. You're extraordinary, Jasper said firmly. Not because of how you look, though I happen to think you're lovely, but because of this. He touched her chest lightly, right over her heart. This courage, this resilience, this absolute refusal to be diminished, that's what makes you beautiful. Harper couldn't breathe. Nobody had ever said anything like that to her. Nobody had ever looked at her the way Jasper was looking at her now, like she was precious and rare. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll come back, after tonight. Say you'll give us a real chance. She should say no, should be sensible, should remember that he was a vampire king and she was a waitress, that their worlds were impossibly far apart, that this could only end in heartbreak. But Harper had spent her whole life being sensible, being careful, accepting the limitations the world placed on her. And where had it gotten her? To a ballroom where people laughed at her dress, to a life of constant struggle, to a future that looked exactly like her present. Jasper was offering something different, something dangerous and impossible and probably stupid. She was so tired of being careful. Yes, Harper said, I'll come back. His smile could have lit the cavern. Then let me show you one more thing before I return you to the surface. He led her to the edge of the underground city, where the buildings gave way to raw stone. A path wound upward into darkness. They climbed in comfortable silence until the path opened into a cave that faced outward. Beyond the cave mouth, the city spread out below them, the real city, the human one, glittering with electric lights. They were somewhere in the hills that ringed the valley, high enough to see everything. I come here when I need to remember why I do this, Jasper said quietly. Why I maintain the balance between our worlds. Look at it. Millions of lives, each one brief and precious. They don't know we exist, don't know that their safety depends on laws enforced in shadows. But I know, and so I carry the weight so they don't have to. Harper slipped her hand into his fingers closed around hers, cool and steady. You're a good king, she said. I try to be. They stood together watching the city until the sky began to lighten with the approaching dawn. Then Jasper led her back down, through the underground city, up to the Ashford Estate's main level. A car was waiting outside a sleek black sedan with a vampire driver who nodded respectfully. He'll take you home, Jasper said, and when you're ready to return, call this number. He handed her a card with a single phone number embossed in silver. Day or night, I'll send someone for you. You won't come yourself? Daylight makes travel difficult, but at night, yes, I'll come myself. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent electricity racing up her arm. Thank you, Harper Oakes, for seeing me, for staying, for taking a chance on something impossible. Thank you for asking me to dance, Harper replied. His smile was the last thing she saw before she climbed into the car. The drive back to her apartment felt surreal. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the city waking up, normal people starting normal days, and Harper was returning from an underground vampire kingdom with a silver leaf in her pocket and a vampire king's phone number in her hand. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it, tiny, cramped, with water stains on the ceiling and a radiator that clanked. But somehow it felt different. Or maybe she felt different. Harper changed out of her grandmother's dress, hanging it carefully in the closet. The fabric was still old, still worn, but she no longer saw it as a source of shame. Jasper had looked at her in that dress and seen courage. That changed everything. She slept through most of the day, dreaming of silver eyes and underground cities. When she woke, it was late afternoon. Her phone had 3 missed calls from her best friend Mira and a text that said, "Call me. Where were you? People are talking." Harper called her back. "Oh my God, finally!" Mira practically shouted. "Harper, What the hell happened last night? There are rumors everywhere, people saying you danced with Jasper Ashford, that he took you out of the ball. Some people are saying you seduced him, others are saying he hypnotized you. Mrs. Chen from the scholarship committee called looking for you. What is happening? Harper sat down heavily on her couch. She'd been so caught up in the impossible magic of the night that she'd forgotten the human world would have its own reactions. It's complicated, she said. Uncomplicated. So Harper told her. Not everything, not about vampires or underground kingdoms. She wasn't sure Jasper would want that spread around. Wasn't sure Mira would even believe her. But she told her about the laughter, about Jasper asking her to dance, about spending the evening getting to know him. You're dating Jasper Ashford, Mira said flatly. You, the girl who eats ramen for dinner 4 nights a week, are dating the richest, most powerful man in the city. I'm not dating him. We just talked. Harper, listen to me very carefully. Jasper Ashford hasn't been seen with anyone in years. He's basically a recluse. The fact that he not only danced with you but spent the evening with you is huge. You understand that, right? I'm beginning to. So what are you going to do? Harper looked at the silver card on her coffee table. I'm going to call him. When? Tonight. She could practically hear Mira grinning. My best friend is dating a billionaire. This is insane. I love it. Wait, what are you going to wear when you see him next? Not that dress again, no offense. I don't know. I don't exactly have a wardrobe for this. Then we're going shopping. My treat, don't argue. If you're going to run in those circles, you need at least one outfit that won't get you laughed at. They spent the afternoon at a consignment shop Mira knew, where Harper found a simple black dress that fit perfectly and cost less than a week's groceries. It wasn't designer, but it was elegant, timeless. That evening, after Mira left, Harper picked up the silver card. Her hands were shaking. This was crazy. She should forget the whole thing, go back to her normal life. Except that last night was a beautiful anomaly. But she didn't want to. She dialed the number. It rang once before Jasper's voice answered. Harper. Just her name, but the way he said it made her feel like she was the only person in the world. Hi, she said, suddenly shy. I'm calling, like you said. I'm glad. Are you free tonight? Yes. I'll pick you up in an hour. We'll have dinner. Somewhere quiet where we can talk. Okay. Harper? Yeah? I haven't stopped thinking about you since you left. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. Me neither. Good. I'll see you soon. He arrived exactly an hour later, pulling up outside her building in a different car, this one a vintage model that looked like it belonged in a museum. He got out and came to her door himself, wearing dark jeans and a sweater that somehow made him look both more approachable and more impossibly beautiful. You look lovely, he said when she opened the door. It's just a consignment shop dress. It's you in it. That's what makes it lovely. He offered his arm. Shall we? Dinner was at a small Italian restaurant tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. The kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles and a grandmother cooking in the back. They sat in a corner booth, and Jasper ordered her wine while asking about her day with genuine interest. Mira thinks I'm crazy, Harper admitted. Are you? Probably. This is crazy, right? You and me. By most standards, yes. He reached across the table and took her hand. But I've lived too long to care about most standards. If this feels right to you, that's all that matters. Does it feel right to you? More than anything has in 200 years. They talked through dinner pasta for Harper, nothing for Jasper, though he sipped wine to keep her company. She told him about her art restoration dreams, about the particular satisfaction of taking something damaged and making it whole again. He told her about his own artistic pursuits over the centuries, about learning to paint from a minor master in Florence, about abandoning it when he realized he'd never age past the skill level he'd achieved. That's the curse of immortality, he said. You have forever to learn, but you also have forever to compare yourself to everyone who came before. It becomes paralyzing. So teach me, Harper said impulsively. You know techniques that aren't even written down anymore. Show me. His eyes lit up. You'd want that? I'd love that. After dinner, he drove her up into the hills. Not to the cave from last night, but to a different overlook where the city sprawled below like a field of stars. I have a question, Harper said as they stood at the edge, the night wind pulling at her hair. And you can tell me if it's too personal. Ask. Serafina mentioned someone, a human you cared about before. What happened? Jasper was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was distant. Her name was Catherine. This was 1823. She was a painter, brilliant, fierce, uncompromising. I fell in love with her gradually, the way you fall asleep. Just a little at a time and then all at once. We had 2 years together. I thought I'd hidden her well enough. Thought my protection was sufficient. He stopped. Harper waited. Valentius, another vampire lord, ambitious and cruel, wanted my position. He couldn't challenge me directly, so he went after her, captured her, sent me pieces of her paintings as a message. His hands clenched on the railing. By the time I found her, she was already dying. He'd drained her slowly, made her suffer. She died in my arms, asking me not to avenge her, not to start a war over her death. Did you listen? No. I killed Valentius and everyone who helped him. It took me 3 days and left a power vacuum that nearly collapsed the court. Serafina had to hold things together while He trailed off. Grieved, Harper finished softly. Destroyed myself trying to forget. I swore I'd never care about a human again, never put anyone in that position. And I kept that promise for 200 years. He turned to look at her. Until I saw you standing in that ballroom refusing to break. Harper's throat was tight. I'm not brave like you think I am. I'm terrified right now. Of me? Of how much I already care about you. I barely know you, but it feels like I do. Like I've been waiting for you without knowing what I was waiting for. She laughed shakily. That's crazy, right? No. He cupped her face in his cool hands. That's exactly how I feel. When he kissed her, it was gentle, careful, like she was something precious that might break. Harper leaned into him, and let herself stop being sensible for once in her life. The next weeks fell into a rhythm. Harper continued her normal life, work at the diner, classes at night, her small apartment. But several evenings a week, Jasper would pick her up and they'd disappear into his world. Sometimes they went to the underground city, where he taught her vampire history and introduced her to members of his court. Sometimes they stayed in the mansion above, in his library or his art studio, talking until dawn forced him inside. He was teaching her to paint using techniques from Renaissance masters. She was terrible at it, but he was patient and encouraging and seemed to genuinely enjoy watching her try. You're focusing too much on the outcome, he said one night, standing behind her and guiding her brush hand. Feel the paint, let it flow. Easy for you to say, you've had 500 years of practice. And in 500 years you'll be exceptional, but for now just enjoy the process. Harper laughed. I don't have 500 years. The moment the words left her mouth, the air changed. Jasper's hand stilled on hers. No, he said quietly. You don't. The mortality conversation. They'd been dancing around it for weeks, but suddenly it was there between them, unavoidable. Harper set down the brush and turned to face him. How does it work? Turning someone? It's not simple. The vampire drinks the human to the point of death, then feeds them vampire blood. The transformation takes 3 days and is unpleasant. Many don't survive, and those who do are changed fundamentally. You wouldn't be human anymore. You'd lose the sun, the taste of food, the ability to have children. You'd watch everyone you know age and die while you stayed frozen. But we'd have time, together. Yes. Is that something you'd want? Eventually? Jasper moved away, putting distance between them. I want you safe and happy. If becoming a vampire would make you either of those things, I'd turn you tonight. But Harper, you're 22. You've barely lived. I won't take your humanity before you've had a chance to experience it fully. What if I want you more than I want humanity? Then I'd say you're intoxicated by the novelty of this, by me, and I care about you too much to let you make that choice lightly. He turned back to her, his expression pained. Ask me again in a year. If you still want it, if you've truly understood what you'd be giving up, then we'll talk seriously. But not now. Harper wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she knew her own mind. But deep down she recognized the wisdom in his words. She was caught up in the romance of it all, the vampire king, the secret world, the impossible love story. Was she in love with Jasper, or in love with the idea of him? She didn't know. Not yet. Okay, she said. A year. His relief was visible. Thank you. But if Jasper thought time would cool Harper's feelings, he was wrong. As autumn turned to winter, she only fell deeper. He was thoughtful in ways that constantly surprised her, remembering her favorite tea, asking about her classes, sending her books he thought she'd enjoy. When her radiator broke and her landlord refused to fix it, Jasper had a new heating system installed overnight. When she mentioned missing her grandmother, he spent an evening just listening to Harper's stories, asking questions, helping her remember. And he was protective in a way that should have been overwhelming, but somehow wasn't. When a drunk customer at the diner got aggressive with her, Jasper appeared out of nowhere and convinced the man to leave with nothing more than a look. When Harper had to walk home late at night, there was always a car waiting vampire security Jasper had assigned without asking. "You can't just spend money on me," Harper protested after he'd tried to pay off her student loans. "Why not?" "Because it's too much. I can't pay you back." "I don't want you to pay me back. I want you to stop working 2 jobs and focus on your studies. Let me help." "Jasper, please." He took her hands. "I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. It means nothing to me except as a tool. Let me use it to make your life easier. That would make me happy." She'd accepted the heating system and the security because they felt like safety, but the loans felt different, bigger, like accepting them would make her dependent in a way she wasn't comfortable with. "I need to do some things myself," Harper said finally. "I need to know I can stand on my own. Does that make sense?" "Yes." He kissed her forehead. "But know the offer stands. Always." Not everything was perfect. Serafina remained wary, watching Harper with eyes that saw too much. Other vampires in the court were less subtle in their disapproval, and there were moments when Harper felt the vast gulf between their worlds, when Jasper mentioned events from a century ago as if they were yesterday, when he moved with inhuman speed and had to consciously slow down around her, when his eyes tracked movement she couldn't see. But they were happy. For 3 months, genuinely happy. Then Valentius returned. Harper was in the underground city with Jasper when the alarm bells rang, actual bells, bronze and ancient, that filled the cavern with urgent sound. Jasper's whole body went tense. "What is it?" Harper asked. "Breach. Someone entered the city without permission." He was already moving toward the castle, and Harper had to run to keep up. The throne room, because of course he had a throne room, even if he never used it, was filled with vampires. Serafina stood at the center, her face grim, and kneeling before her, held by guards, was a vampire Harper didn't recognize. He was younger looking than Jasper, with pale hair cut short and eyes like chips of ice. When he saw Jasper enter, he smiled. "My king," he said, his tone mocking. "How good of you to grace us with your presence." "Theron." Jasper's voice could have frozen blood. "You were banished. Returning carries a death sentence." "I'm aware, but my lord sent me with a message too important to trust to letters. Your lord is dead. I killed him 200 years ago." "Did you?" Theron's smile widened. "Are you certain? You found a body. You assumed it was Valentius, but you were so consumed with grief over your little painter that you didn't look too closely." The room went deathly silent. "Explain," Jasper said softly. "Valentius lives. He's been in hiding, building strength, making alliances, and now he's ready to take what should have been his." Theron looked directly at Harper. "He knows about the human, knows you've made the same mistake twice. He says to tell you, history repeats itself, and this time you won't even get to say goodbye." Jasper moved so fast Harper didn't see it. One moment he was across the room. The next, his hand was around Theron's throat, lifting the vampire off the ground. "Where is he?" Jasper's voice was utterly calm, utterly terrifying. "Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. But I don't. He's hidden too well. You'll find out when he's ready." Theron was choking, his face turning darker, but he kept smiling. "Kill me if you want. It changes nothing. The war is coming, and you'll lose everything you care about all over again." Jasper's hand tightened. There was a crack like breaking wood, and Theron went limp. The body dissolved to ash in seconds, leaving nothing but a stain on the floor. Jasper stood frozen, staring at his hand. Then he turned to Serafina. "Lock down the city. No one in or out without my express permission. Double the guard on all entrances. And send word to our allies I want eyes everywhere looking for Valentius." "It's already done," Serafina said quietly. Then she looked at Harper. "You need to leave." "No," Jasper said immediately. "Jasper, I said no. She stays where I can protect her." "You couldn't protect Catherine." The words hit like a physical blow. Jasper actually flinched, but when he spoke, his voice was steady. "I won't make the same mistakes. Harper stays." Serafina opened her mouth to argue, but Harper spoke first. "Can I have a say in this?" Both vampires looked at her. "I appreciate that you want to protect me," Harper said to Jasper. "But Serafina's right. I'm a liability, a target. If this Valentius wants to hurt you, I'm the easiest way to do it. Which is exactly why you need to stay where I can keep you safe. Or I leave the city entirely. Go somewhere he wouldn't think to look. Stay with Mira's family upstate." "Absolutely not." "Jasper? No." He crossed to her, taking her shoulders gently. "I have already lost one person I love to that monster. I will not lose you. I can't. Please, Harper, trust me to keep you safe." The fear in his eyes was real, raw. Harper could see the memory of Catherine's death written in every line of his face. She wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the logical reasons why leaving was smarter. But looking at him, she couldn't do it. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll stay." The relief that flooded his expression was heartbreaking. The next days were tense. Harper stayed in the underground castle, surrounded by guards at all times. Jasper barely left her side except to coordinate the search for Valentius. Reports came in, constantly sightings that turned out to be false, rumors that led nowhere, whispers of an army gathering in the shadows. "How big is this army?" Harper asked Serafina one afternoon while Jasper was in a meeting. "Unknown." Valentius was always good at turning vampires to his cause, promising them power, feeding their resentments. Serafina poured herself something dark and viscous from a crystal decanter. "Blood," Harper realized. "The court has been stable under Jasper's rule, but stability breeds complacency. There are vampires who think we've grown soft, that we should be ruling humans openly rather than hiding. Valentius speaks to that impulse." "But Jasper is stronger, right? More powerful?" "In a direct fight, yes. Jasper is one of the oldest vampires alive, and his power is immense. But wars aren't won by strength alone. They're won by strategy, by numbers, by knowing your enemy's weakness." Serafina looked at Harper meaningfully. "You are his weakness." "I'm trying not to be." "I know, and I no longer think you should leave. You were right before. If Valentius wants you, distance won't stop him. Better you're here where we can defend you." Serafina set down her glass. "But understand, child, if it comes to a choice between you and the kingdom, Jasper will choose you. He'll burn the world to keep you safe. That's what love does to men like him, and that's what Valentius is counting on." The attack came on the 7th night. Harper was asleep in Jasper's chambers, not his bed, though she'd started spending nights there just to be close. She woke to the sound of bells and shouting. Jasper was already at the door, moving with inhuman speed. "Stay here," he commanded. "The room is warded. Nothing can get through." "What's happening?" "Valentius. He's here." Then he was gone, and Harper was alone in the room with her heart trying to beat out of her chest. She could hear fighting, the clash of metal, the sounds of bodies hitting stone, screaming in voices too inhuman to be anything but vampire. The walls shook. Something exploded nearby with enough force to make her ears ring. Harper wanted to help, wanted to do something other than cower in a locked room. But she wasn't a fighter, wasn't a vampire. She was just a human art student who'd fallen in love with someone from a world she barely understood. The fighting seemed to go on forever. Then, suddenly, it stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. Harper waited, every muscle tense, barely breathing. The door opened. Jasper stood in the doorway, covered in blood. His white hair was matted with it, his clothes torn, but his eyes were clear, and he was moving under his own power. "It's over," he said. "We won." Harper launched herself at him, not caring about the blood, just needing to feel that he was real and whole. He caught her, holding her tight enough to hurt. "I thought I'd lost you," she whispered into his chest. "Never. I told you, I'm harder to kill than that." They held each other until Harper's shaking stopped. Then Jasper pulled back enough to look at her. "We captured 3 of Valentius's soldiers," he said. "They're being questioned now, but Valentius himself wasn't with them. This was just a test. He wanted to see our defenses, measure our response. So it's not over." "No, but we're ready now, and he's shown his hand. That gives us an advantage." Jasper brushed hair back from her face. "I need to go help with the interrogations. Will you be all right here for a bit longer?" "I'm fine. Go." He kissed her deep and desperate and fierce and then left again. Harper sat down on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. This was her life now, attacks and blood and a war she didn't fully understand. And she'd chosen it. Chosen to stay, to be with Jasper, to accept everything that came with loving him. She didn't regret it, but she was terrified. Serafina came to check on her an hour later, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. "Casualties?" Harper asked. 5 dead, a dozen wounded. We lost one of the east tunnel entrances. They collapsed it during the retreat. It could have been worse. Serafina sat down heavily in a chair. "The prisoners aren't talking. Valentius chose his soldiers well. What will happen to them?" "Execution, most likely. They attacked the king. There's only one punishment for that." Harper should have been horrified. Maybe she was, underneath the numbness, but mostly she was just tired. "You love him," Serafina said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "Enough to live like this? Always in danger? Always watching for threats?" "If it means being with him, yes." Serafina studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. "You're stronger than Catherine was. She loved Jasper, but she was fragile, breakable. You..." She shook her head. "You're steel underneath. I didn't see it at first, but Jasper did." "Is that a compliment?" "It's an acknowledgement. I've spent the last 3 months waiting for you to run or to get yourself killed. You've done neither. That's impressive." "Thanks, I think." When Jasper finally returned, it was nearly dawn. He was clean now, the blood washed away, wearing fresh clothes. But he looked exhausted in a way Harper had never seen. "Come here," she said, patting the bed beside her. He came, lying down and pulling her against him. His body was cool and solid, and Harper pressed her ear to his chest, even though there was no heartbeat to listen for. "Tell me something good," she said. "Something from before all this. A happy memory." He was quiet for a moment. Then, 1889, Paris. "I went to the World's Fair and saw the Eiffel Tower when it was brand new. Everyone hated it, called it an eyesore, said it ruined the skyline. But I stood underneath it and looked up at all that iron and ambition, and I thought, this is what humans do. You build impossible things just to prove you can. It's ridiculous and beautiful and so very alive." Harper smiled against his chest. "Did you climb it?" "To the very top. Technically it was closed, but I've never been good at following rules." Rebel Vampire King. Something like that. His arms tightened around her. I want to show you Paris, all the cities I've loved. I want to take you to Florence and show you where I learned to paint, to Vienna during the opera season, to Japan during cherry blossom season. That sounds perfect. We'll go. When this is over, when it's safe, I'll show you the whole world. It was a promise and a hope and a dream of the future. Harper held on to it like a lifeline. The war with Valentius settled into an uneasy stalemate. Weeks passed without another attack, but tension hung over the underground city like a storm about to break. Jasper increased security, called in favors from allied vampire lords, prepared for a siege that might or might not come. Harper tried to maintain some normalcy. She still went to her classes during the day, though always with vampire guards shadowing her at a distance. She still worked at the diner, though Jasper hated it and kept trying to convince her to quit. She needed these pieces of her human life, needed to remember who she was outside of being the Vampire King's beloved. It was during one of her shifts at the diner that she met Marcus. He came in during the lunch rush, sitting at the counter and ordering coffee. Nothing unusual about that. But when Harper brought him his cup, he looked at her with eyes that were just slightly too bright. Vampire. You're Harper, he said quietly. Every nerve in her body went on alert. Do I know you? No, but I know you. Everyone in Valentius's camp knows you. You're the reason we're at war. Harper's hand went to the pendant Jasper had given her spelled, he'd said, to call for help if she was in danger. She pressed it now, praying it worked. I'm not here to hurt you, Marcus said quickly. I'm here to talk. About what? About ending this before more people die. He leaned forward. I don't care about Valentius's ambitions. I didn't sign up for a war. I just want to live my life in peace. But he'll never stop. Not while you exist. You're his obsession now, just like Catherine was. So what are you suggesting? Leave, disappear. Go somewhere Jasper won't find you. Without you in the equation, Valentius loses his leverage. The war ends. Harper felt sick. You want me to abandon Jasper? I want fewer people to die. Is your happiness worth the lives this war will cost? It was a fair question. A horrible fair question. How many vampires had already died defending her? How many more would before this was over? But before Harper could answer, the diner door burst open and Jasper strode in, his eyes blazing silver. He took in the scene instantly. Harper at the counter, the vampire across from her, the tension in the air. Step away from her, Jasper said, his voice deadly quiet. Marcus held up his hands. I'm not armed. I just came to talk. You're one of his. I can smell it on you. Yes, but I'm not here to fight. Jasper moved between Harper and Marcus, his entire body radiating threat. You have 10 seconds to explain why I shouldn't kill you where you sit. Marcus explained quickly, outlining the same proposal he'd made to Harper. When he finished, Jasper's expression was carved from ice. No. My lord, she is not a bargaining chip. She is not a variable to be removed. She is mine, and I will protect her with every resource at my disposal. If Valentius wants to end this war, he can come face me himself. He will, and when he does, he'll use her against you, just like before. Don't you see? You're repeating the same pattern. It'll end the same way. Then I'll die defending her. But I won't send her away. Now get out of my city before I forget that you came unarmed. Marcus left, casting one last look at Harper that might have been pity. The diner was silent. The human customers were staring, sensing something wrong even if they couldn't identify what. Harper's manager was on the phone, probably calling the police. We need to go, Harper said quietly. Jasper nodded. He left enough money on the counter to cover her entire shift plus a generous tip, then led her outside to where his car was parked illegally in front of a hydrant. They drove in silence back to the mansion. Harper could feel Jasper's rage like a physical thing simmering beneath his controlled exterior. When they were safely inside, in his study with the door locked, Harper said, he had a point. Jasper turned on her, his eyes blazing. Don't! How many people have died because of me? None. 0. People have died because Valentius is a power-hungry monster who can't accept that I beat him centuries ago. You are not responsible for his actions. But I'm the excuse. Without me, without you, he'd find another excuse, another weakness to exploit. This is who he is, Harper. He doesn't care about you specifically. He cares about hurting me. If you left, he'd just target someone else I care about. Serafina, maybe. Or the humans who work in the mansion. Or he'd start killing innocents until I gave him what he wanted. Harper sank into a chair. I hate this. I hate feeling helpless. Jasper knelt in front of her, taking her hands. You're not helpless. You're the strongest person I know. You stood in a ballroom full of people who mocked you and didn't break. You walked into a vampire's world and didn't flinch. You've handled threats and danger and the reality of what I am without losing yourself. That's not helpless. That's extraordinary. I'm just a human. I can't fight like you can. Can't protect myself if he comes for me. Then let me protect you. Let me be what I am, a king, a warrior, a creature designed for battle. This is what I do, Harper. This is what I'm good at. Trust me to do it. She looked into his silver eyes and saw absolute conviction. He believed what he was saying, believed he could keep her safe. She wanted to believe it too. Okay, she said, but I'm not going to just sit around waiting to be rescued. Teach me to defend myself, not to fight vampires. I know that's impossible, but basic self-defense. How to buy time if something happens. Jasper considered, then nodded. I can do that. They started training the next night. Jasper was a patient but demanding teacher, showing her how to break grips, where to strike to cause maximum pain, how to use her environment as a weapon. Harper was clumsy at first, her human reflexes impossibly slow compared to his. But she practiced until her muscles ached, until the movement started to feel natural. Good, Jasper said, after she successfully escaped a hold for the third time in a row. But remember, the goal isn't to win. It's to survive long enough for help to arrive. I know. And if Valentius himself comes for you, Jasper's expression went dark. Run. Don't fight. Don't try to be brave. Just run and call for me. Promise me. I promise. But Harper knew it was a promise she might not be able to keep. Because if Valentius came for her, it would be to draw Jasper into a trap. And she wouldn't run if that meant leading Jasper to his death. Winter deepened into January. Harper's year of waiting was nearly up the year Jasper had asked for before they seriously discussed her turning. She found herself thinking about it more and more, what it would mean to become vampire, to give up sunlight and food and her humanity, to live forever at Jasper's side. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt inevitable. Right. She was planning how to bring it up when Valentius finally made his real move. It happened during one of Harper's night classes. She was in the middle of a lecture on medieval manuscripts when the power cut out. The building's emergency lights kicked on, bathing everything in red. Harper's hand went to her pendant, but before she could press it, someone grabbed her from behind. A hand clamped over her mouth. She tried to scream, tried to fight, but whoever held her was inhumanly strong. Vampire. She was dragged backward through a door she hadn't noticed before, into a service corridor that ran behind the classrooms. 2 more vampires waited there, both pale and cold-eyed. The king's pet, one of them said, studying Harper like she was a specimen. Hardly seems worth all this fuss. Valentius wants her alive, the one holding Harper said. That's all that matters. They moved fast, carrying her through tunnels Harper hadn't known existed, out of the building and into a waiting van. She tried to activate the pendant, but one of the vampires snatched it from her neck and crushed it. None of that, he said pleasantly. We wouldn't want to spoil the surprise. Harper's mind raced. She needed to think, needed a plan. But terror was making it hard to focus. They drove for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. When the van stopped and they pulled her out, Harper found herself in front of an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city, the kind of place nobody would think to look. Inside, the warehouse had been transformed into something like a throne room. Tapestries hung on the walls, candles provided flickering light, and sitting in a chair that was almost but not quite a throne was a vampire who could only be Valentius. He looked like Jasper, the same pale skin, the same white hair, the same ageless beauty. But where Jasper's eyes were silver, Valentius's were gold, and where Jasper radiated controlled power, Valentius had something wilder, more chaotic. "Harper Oakes," he said, his voice like honey over gravel. At last. "I've been so curious about you." "Let me go," Harper said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "No, I don't think I will. You see, you're the final piece of a puzzle I've been working on for 200 years. The key to destroying Jasper Obsidian once and for all. He'll kill you for this. He'll try. That's what I'm counting on." Valentius stood and approached her. "Do you know what happened the last time we faced each other? After he killed my followers, burned my stronghold, destroyed everything I'd built, I barely escaped. Spent decades healing, hiding, gathering strength. And I realized something important. Jasper is unbeatable in direct confrontation. He's older, stronger, more skilled. I can't win that fight. So, what's your plan? Use me as bait?" "Essentially, yes, but with a twist." Valentius circled her slowly. "I'm going to turn you, make you vampire, then I'm going to make you kill him." Ice flooded Harper's veins. "That's impossible. I'd never—" "You won't have a choice. A newly turned vampire is bound to their sire, mind, body, soul. You'll want to please me more than you want to breathe. And when I command you to drive a stake through Jasper's heart, you'll do it. You'll destroy the man you love, and you won't even be able to stop yourself." Harper's legs gave out. The vampires holding her were the only things keeping her upright. "The beauty of it," Valentius continued, "is that it destroys him completely. Not just physically, emotionally, psychologically. He'll die knowing that his greatest love became his executioner, that everything he did to protect you was for nothing. It's poetry, really. You're insane. I'm efficient. Now, let's begin." He reached for her, and Harper did the only thing she could think of. She screamed, not for help. There was no one to hear her. She screamed in pure defiance, the same way she'd stood in that ballroom months ago and refused to let cruel laughter break her. If she was going to die, or be turned into a weapon, she wouldn't go quietly. Valentius backhanded her across the face. Her head snapped to the side, and she tasted blood. "Spirit," he said approvingly. "I can see what Jasper likes about you. Pity it won't matter soon." He grabbed her chin, tilting her head to expose her throat. Harper felt his breath on her skin, cold and wrong, felt the razor-sharp points of his fangs press against her jugular. Then the warehouse exploded. Not figuratively, actually exploded. The wall to her left disintegrated in a shower of brick and mortar, and through the hole stepped Jasper. He looked like death itself. His eyes blazed silver white. His face was set in an expression of such absolute fury that even the vampires holding Harper flinched. Power radiated from him in waves that made the air itself feel heavy. "Let her go," Jasper said, his voice carrying despite being barely above a whisper, "and I'll make your deaths quick." Valentius laughed. "There he is, right on schedule. Did you think I wouldn't account for your protective instincts? Did you think I'd come alone?" More explosions rocked the warehouse as other entrances were breached. Vampires poured in Jasper's forces, led by Seraphina. The warehouse descended into chaos. The vampires holding Harper released her to join the fight. She scrambled away, trying to reach Jasper, but Valentius blocked her path. "Not so fast," he said. "We haven't finished our conversation." Jasper was there in an instant, putting himself between Harper and Valentius. "Your fight is with me." "Oh, I know, that's the point." Valentius drew a sword from somewhere, the blade gleaming in the candlelight. "Let's end what we started 200 years ago." They fought like nothing Harper had ever seen, faster than her eyes could track, two blurs of motion and violence. The clash of their blades rang like bells. They moved through the warehouse and out into the night, their battle carving destruction wherever they went. Harper tried to follow, but Seraphina grabbed her arm. "Stay here. Stay safe. Let him fight. I can't just watch. You can and you will. This is what he was born for. Trust him." So Harper watched from the shattered warehouse wall as the two ancient vampires tried to kill each other. She saw Jasper take a wound that would have killed a human, saw him keep fighting without even slowing, saw him move with a grace and ferocity that was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. He was magnificent, and he was fighting for her. The battle seemed to last forever, but it probably only took minutes. In the end, Jasper was simply better. Faster, stronger, more skilled. He disarmed Valentius and drove him to his knees. "This is for Catherine," Jasper said, his blade at Valentius's throat. "And for every peaceful year you stole from me, and for daring to touch her." He struck. Valentius's head tumbled from his shoulders, and his body dissolved to ash. It was over. Jasper stood in the ruins of the warehouse, covered in blood and breathing hard, not because he needed air, but because the fight had exhausted even him. Then his eyes found Harper, and his expression crumpled. He was across the distance in a heartbeat, pulling her into his arms with enough force to lift her off the ground. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his hands running over her, checking for injuries. "Did he bite you? Turn you?" I'm okay. Harper clung to him, shaking. "You came." "Of course I came. I'll always come for you." He pulled back just enough to look at her, his silver eyes bright with unshed tears. "I thought I'd lost you. When the pendant went dead and I couldn't find you, Harper, I thought I'd fail you like I failed Catherine. But you didn't. I'm here. I'm alive." He kissed her then, desperate and fierce, like he was trying to prove to himself that she was real. Harper kissed him back just as fiercely, tasting blood and smoke and the sharp edge of fear finally giving way to relief. When they finally pulled apart, Serafina was waiting. "Valentius is dead," she reported. "His forces are surrendering or fleeing. The war is over." "Good." Jasper didn't take his eyes off Harper. "Send word to our allies. Offer clemency to any of Valentius's followers who swear loyalty to the crown. Execute any who refuse." "Already done. I've been managing your kingdom for 500 years. I know the protocol." Serafina's expression softened. "Take her home, Jasper. Both of you need rest." They returned to the underground city as dawn was breaking above. Harper was exhausted, running on adrenaline and shock. Jasper carried her to his chambers and set her gently on the bed. "I should let you sleep," he said. "Stay," Harper said, catching his hand. "Please." He stayed, lying beside her fully clothed, just holding her. Harper pressed her face into his chest and let herself shake, let herself feel all the terror she'd been too busy surviving to process. "I was so scared," she whispered. "I know. So was I. Not of dying, of becoming his weapon, of being used to hurt you. That would never have worked. Even if he'd turned you, even if you'd been bound to him, I wouldn't have let you hurt yourself by hurting me. I would have found a way to break his hold, or I would have let you kill me. Either way, you wouldn't have had to live with that guilt." Harper pulled back to look at him. "You would have died? Just like that? For you?" Without hesitation. "That's insane. That's love." He brushed hair back from her face. "I've lived for 5 centuries, Harper. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've accumulated more wealth and power than most people can imagine, but none of it means anything compared to you. You're the first thing in 200 years that's made me feel alive. I'd give up everything, my crown, my kingdom, my immortality if it meant keeping you safe." Harper's eyes were burning. "I love you. I love you too. So much it terrifies me." They lay together in silence for a while. Then Harper said, "It's been a year." "What?" "You said to ask you again in a year, about turning me. It's been a year." Jasper went very still. "Harper, I know what I'm giving up. The sun, food, my humanity. I know it's dangerous and the transformation might kill me. I know I'll watch everyone I care about age and die while I stay frozen. I've thought about all of it." She met his eyes. "And I still want it. I want you. Forever, if you'll have me." "You're sure?" "Completely. We don't have to rush. We could wait another year, 5 years, let you live your human life fully." "Jasper." Harper put her hand on his cheek. "I don't want to wait. I don't want to spend whatever time I have left aging while you stay the same. I don't want to die in 50 years and leave you alone again. I want to stand beside you as an equal. I want forever." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "If we do this, there's no going back. I know. And it will hurt. The transformation is agony. I know. And you might not survive. I know. She pulled his face down to hers. But I trust you, and I choose this. I choose you. When he opened his eyes, they were shining. Then I'll turn you, but not tonight. You need to rest, to heal from what Valentius did. And I need to prepare. We'll do it right, safely, with every precaution. When? A week. That gives us time to make arrangements, to say goodbye to your human life properly, to be sure. Harper nodded. It was fair, more than fair. And it gave her time to tell Mira, to quit her job, to prepare mentally for the biggest change of her life. The next week passed in a blur. Harper explained to Mira what she was about to do or tried to. Mira didn't believe in vampires, but she believed Harper was in love and about to do something irrevocable. Are you absolutely sure? Mira asked over coffee in their favorite cafe. Like, this is permanent sure? I'm sure. You'll never see another sunrise. I'll see them with Jasper in paintings and photographs, in stories. That's enough. You'll watch me get old and die. That one hurt. Harper's eyes stung. I know. That's the hardest part. But Mira, I love him. And I want the life he's offering. I want forever. Mira was quiet for a long moment. Then she took Harper's hand. Okay, then I'm happy for you. And also terrified, but mostly happy. They spent the day together, just the two of them, doing all their favorite things one last time as humans together. When they said goodbye that evening, Harper held her best friend tight and tried to memorize the feeling. Don't forget me when you're a fancy, immortal vampire queen, Mira said, her voice thick. Never. You're stuck with me forever now. Literally. The night of the transformation, Jasper prepared everything carefully. A room in the castle set up with a bed and supplies, medical equipment on hand, even though it wouldn't help much, Serafina standing by to assist. Are you ready? Jasper asked, his hands gentle on Harper's shoulders. She was terrified, but she nodded. Ready. He'd explained the process. He would drink her blood until she was on the edge of death, then feed her his blood. The transformation would take 3 days. She would be unconscious for most of it, lost in fever dreams while her body died and reformed into something new. Some people never woke up. Others woke up wrong, driven mad by the change. But some woke up successfully. And Jasper had done this before, had turned other vampires over the centuries. He knew how to do it right. Harper lay down on the bed. Jasper knelt beside her, his face serious. Last chance to change your mind, he said. I'm not changing my mind. Do it. He bent to her throat. She felt his fangs pierce her skin, felt the strange pulling sensation as he began to drink. It didn't hurt exactly, more like pressure, like falling. She felt herself getting weaker, her heartbeat slowing. Just when she thought she couldn't take any more, when darkness was creeping in from the edges of her vision, Jasper pulled back. His wrist was at her lips, bleeding, and his voice was saying, "Drink, Harper, drink." She drank. The blood was strange, metallic, and sweet and wrong, but she swallowed it down, feeling it burn through her like fire. Then the pain started. It felt like her body was tearing itself apart from the inside, like every cell was dying and being reborn. Harper tried to scream, but no sound came out. She was dimly aware of Jasper holding her, of Serafina's voice saying something, but mostly there was just pain. And then there was darkness. She dreamed strange dreams, memories that weren't hers. Jasper's memories, flowing into her through his blood. She saw the Renaissance through his eyes, saw Catherine's face, saw centuries of history play out in accelerated motion. She felt his loneliness, his love, his hope that she would survive this. She also dreamed her own memories, her grandmother teaching her to sew, her parents before the accident, the ballroom where she'd first seen Jasper, every moment of her human life playing out like a film, precious and brief. When Harper finally opened her eyes, everything was different. The room was too bright. She could see individual dust motes in the air, could count the threads in the canopy above the bed. She could hear heartbeats, human heartbeats, somewhere far above in the mansion, could smell blood and life and 1,000 other things she had no context for. And she was so thirsty. "Harper?" Jasper's voice. She turned her head and saw him sitting beside the bed, his face anxious and hopeful. "Can you hear me?" "Yes." Her voice was different, clearer. "How long?" 3 days. You made it. You're alive. You're vampire." She sat up slowly. Her body felt different, stronger, more coordinated, like she'd been living in a clumsy shell and was finally free. She looked at her hands and saw they were paler, the skin luminous. "I'm thirsty," she said. "I know, we have blood ready, but first, tell me how you feel. Are you you? Do you remember everything?" Harper thought about it. She remembered her human life clearly, remembered loving Jasper, choosing this, wanting it. But underneath was something new, a connection to him that felt like a golden thread running between their souls. The sire bond, she realized. She could feel his emotions, his fear, his hope, his overwhelming relief. And she could feel her own love for him, amplified by the transformation into something huge and all-consuming. She loved him as a human. But now she loved him with the intensity of an immortal, the kind of love that could last centuries. "I'm me," she said. "Just more." His expression crumpled with relief. He pulled her into his arms and Harper held him tight, marveling at how strong she was now, how easy it would be to hurt him if she wasn't careful. But she was careful. She would always be careful with him. They fed her blood donor blood from humans who provided it willingly. It tasted like life itself, satisfying the burning thirst in a way nothing else could. And then they began teaching her how to be vampire. Control was the first lesson, how to manage her new strength so she didn't break things accidentally, how to move at human speed when needed, how to hide the glow in her eyes. It was harder than it looked, like learning to walk all over again. But Harper had been learning difficult things her whole life. She threw herself into it with the same determination she'd brought to her art restoration studies, and Jasper was a patient teacher. "You're doing remarkably well," Serafina said a week into Harper's new existence. "Most new vampires take months to achieve this level of control. You've done it in days. I had good teachers. You have natural aptitude. You'll make an excellent addition to the court." It was the closest thing to approval Serafina had ever given her. Harper smiled. "Thank you." Her official presentation to the court came 2 weeks later. Harper wore a gown Jasper had commissioned deep purple silk that made her new pale skin look luminous. Her white hair had grown longer in the transformation, falling nearly to her waist. She looked like a vampire, felt like one. And when she walked into the throne room at Jasper's side, the assembled vampires bowed. "My people," Jasper said, his voice carrying through the space. "I present to you Harper Obsidian, my beloved, my choice, my queen." Queen. The word sent shivers through her. But when Harper looked at Jasper, saw the love and pride in his eyes, she knew she could handle it. Could handle anything as long as they faced it together. The celebration lasted 3 days. Vampire parties were apparently marathons. Harper met dozens of vampires, learned names and faces and political alliances. She danced with Jasper until her feet ached, though they healed almost instantly. And when it was finally over, when they were alone in their chambers again, Jasper pulled her close. "No regrets?" he asked. "None. You?" "Only that I didn't do this sooner. That I wasted a year when we could have had forever all along. We have forever now. That's what matters." He kissed her, deep and sweet, and Harper kissed him back, marveling at how different it felt now that she matched his strength. They were equals in a way they hadn't been before. Partners in every sense. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too. For now and for always." The years that followed were happy. Harper learned to navigate vampire politics with the same skill she'd once brought to art restoration, carefully, thoughtfully, seeing the patterns beneath the surface. She became a valuable advisor to Jasper, offering perspectives he'd never considered. She also continued her studies, though in a different form. The vampire archives contained texts on art restoration techniques lost to human history. Harper threw herself into learning them, eventually becoming the court's official conservator. She restored paintings and manuscripts centuries old, bringing beauty back to life. And she and Jasper traveled. They went to Paris and Florence and Vienna, all the places he'd promised to show her. They stood beneath the Eiffel Tower and climbed the hills of Tuscany and watched the opera in gilt-edged boxes. They made new memories to layer over old ones, building a life together that spanned continents and centuries. Mira aged. That was the hard part. Harper visited regularly, watching her best friend's hair turn gray, watching her movements slow, watching time do what time does to humans. But Mira lived a full life, married, had children, built a career she loved, and Harper was there for all of it, the vampire best friend who never changed. When Mira died at 93, surrounded by family, Harper held her hand. "Thank you," Mira whispered, her voice thin with age, "for sharing your impossible life with me." "Thank you for believing in it," Harper replied, tears tracking down her cheeks. "For believing in me. Take care of that vampire king of yours. Always." Jasper found Harper in the garden that night, sitting beneath the silver-leaf trees and crying. "I'm sorry," he said, sitting beside her. "I know how much she meant to you. She was my link to my human life. And now she's gone. Everyone from before is gone. I know, and I'm sorry. This is the price of immortality. The grief never really goes away. But you learn to carry it." Harper leaned into him. "How long did it take you?" "To learn to carry the grief? Centuries. But you have something I didn't." "What? Me? You're not alone in this. We'll carry it together." And they did. Through the decades that followed, through losses and changes and the constant march of human history, they carried it together. Harper never forgot her human life, never forgot the people she'd loved. But she built a new life too, full of purpose and love and the particular joy of forever. On the 100th anniversary of the night they'd met, the night Jasper had asked her to dance in a ballroom full of laughter, they returned to the Ashford estate. The building had been preserved exactly as it was, a museum piece now that vampires no longer bothered hiding as thoroughly. They stood in the ballroom where it had all begun, hand in hand, and Jasper pulled her into a waltz. "Do you remember?" he asked as they spun across the empty floor. "Everything. The dress, the laughter, you walking down those stairs like something from a dream. I saw you standing there so brave and so alone, and I thought there is someone worth knowing, someone worth loving. Were you right?" "More than I could have imagined." He dipped her, grinning. "You exceeded every expectation, Harper Obsidian. You're the best thing that's happened to me in 500 years. Harper laughed, the sound echoing in the empty ballroom. "Only the best? I'm hurt." "Fine. The best thing in 600 years. Happy?" "Very." They danced until the sun threatened the horizon, then returned to their underground kingdom hand in hand. And there, in the city they'd built together, the life they'd created from impossible circumstances, they were happy. Not every moment was perfect. They still fought, still disagreed, still struggled with the weight of leadership and the complications of immortal politics. But they faced it together, always together. And sometimes, when Harper looked at Jasper, really looked at him, at the ancient vampire who'd seen centuries pass and still chose to spend them with her, she remembered that girl in the old dress standing in a ballroom full of laughter. Remembered being so sure she didn't belong. But she'd been wrong. She belonged exactly where she was. Not because of what she wore or who she knew, but because she'd had the courage to stand tall when the world tried to make her small. Because she'd seen an impossible offer and taken it. Because she'd chosen love even when it was dangerous. The whole ballroom had laughed at her old gown. But the vampire king had bowed and asked her to dance. And in doing so, he'd changed both of their lives forever. That girl would have been proud of who Harper had become, would have been amazed by the life she'd built, the love she'd found, the centuries stretching ahead of her full of possibility. And sometimes, in quiet moments, Harper whispered a thank you to her younger self. To her grandmother who'd taught her to stand tall, to everyone who'd shaped her into someone brave enough to take the chance that changed everything. Because in the end, that's what it had all come down to. One chance, one dance, one choice to believe in something impossible, and it had given her forever.